Shui.
Okay, good Erev Shabbos, everyone. Wow, it's a real honor to be here, and here in the Bereditchev in Lakewood, and it's very special to be Hesped Gadol B'Yisrael during Shiva. I was Hesped Reb Moshe during Shiva in the Yeshiva of Staten Island, and people tell me that things that we learned then, they remember all their lives. And our Mila de Hesped for the Sarah Torah, Rav Chaim ben Shmaryo, correct? Was that his name? Rav Shmaryo Yosef Chaim ben Yaakov Yisrael. So I had certain interactions with Rav Chaim that made me feel roy to accept this, because otherwise, who am I? I don't live in Eretz Yisrael. I didn't have regular I learned his Torah a tremendous amount, and said over his shiurim many times. But I can tell you that which they say, that Shechina medaberes mitoch groinai, that the Shechina spoke from his throat. You know, they say that about different people. For example, the Heilige Pietzetzna, Zecher Tzadik Kodesh L'Vracha Zchusa Yagen Aleinu, they say that when they showed him the Torah that they wanted to print, the only Torah that he allowed them to print was that which he didn't remember saying. So you would think it's just the opposite. That which he didn't remember saying, they shouldn't print. So he said that which he didn't remember saying was Shechina medaberes mitoch groinai. That he realized that was the Shechina talking. So that he allowed to print. So there's a famous ma'aseh that they say over from Rav Chaim, that a child was killed in a car accident, and thank you. Child was killed in a car accident, and the father wrote a letter to get chizik, and he was so tzamished that he wrote his name instead of his son's name. And when Rav Chaim read it, he said, "This can't be. This person is still alive." So he had unusual kaiches that it's well known that different people went to him for brachas for children, and you could have 4 different people mamish in the same hour, and he told them different things. To one he said that they should use only wine for Havdalah. To another he said that they should put their beds a certain way in the bedroom. To another he said that they should learn, that they should do Hachnas Tzarchim. And the explanation of this is that it was Mamish Shechina medaberes mitoch groinai. So I will tell you that my first Rebbetzin, Tzadik Tzedekes L'Vracha Zchusa Yagen Aleinu im Liba Basar Baron Shev Lichte Gegan Eden, she had pancreatic cancer, Le'aleinu, and in Sloan Kettering they gave her 6 weeks. Reb Chaim wrote her name in his siddur, and she lived for 2.5 years. So that was, we ended up in the last half year of her life, we ended up walking down our last child to the chuppah. So that was the first thing that I could tell you personally. Then, after Shalosh Regalim, I was Bli Ayin Hara. I mean, everybody should have, she's not alive anymore, but everybody should have such a marriage like I had, where I had only nachas from my first Rebbetzin, I was very skeptical. I wanted to remarry. Baba Rebbe said that it only says Loi Toiv once in the entire Tanakh. Loi Toiv Hayoisa Adam Levadai. So I wanted to remarry, but I was very skeptical. First of all, I had just turned 60, so I didn't feel that I was really such a catch. And no, I'm saying the MS. And secondly, I was very spoiled. So I had asked Reb Chaim for a bracha through my very devoted Talmud, B'Tzalel Klein, and he got a bracha, and I asked him to explain to Reb Chaim my worry, and Reb Chaim said, "Tell him not to worry." So to me, it was like, tell him not to worry. I mean, a bracha, one thing, tell him not to worry. The maase is, I met my Rebbetzin now. She's a very wonderful Rebbetzin, Liayin Hara. She should be gesund and stark. The first person I met. Didn't have to meet anybody else. And it was right away. So that's the koyach of we went to Eretz Yisrael. I was Skan residence for Gateways on Sukkot, the Sukkot before COVID hit. And I went with my Rebbetzin to Rav Chaim. We both said a bracha on him of Shechalak Mechachmasa L'Yireyav. I'll tell you as an aside, I mentioned my Rebbe, Rav Moshe. I remember, I could tell you a story that it happened in front of me. There was a chutz b'dika bacher that came into the Shiva. I had brought the Shiva lunch, and the chutz b'dika bacher came in and said he wanted to know if you could say the bracha of Shechalak Mechachmasel Yireyav on the Satmar Rebbe, the Friedike Satmar Rebbe, Rabbi Yoelish, Zechatzav Kodesh Bracha, Schus Yagen Aleinu. And the Rishiva said, Avada. I'll never forget how he said, Avada. And if that's a chiddush to anybody, you should know that one of them, I'm a big fan of reading biographies of Gedolim. It's interesting that when Reb Chaim had the stroke and half of his body was paralyzed at that time, so he did his chayvis in the hospital. But afterwards he had zero kaiches, and they said that he read biographies of tzaddikim. It's a good thing to know. Many people, wise people, have said that the greatest Musa Svarim of our time is biographies of tzaddikim. It's what you could learn from a biography of a tzaddik. It goes straight into you. Like, for example, if you read the biography of the Manchester Rosh Hashiva, he never washed if he might be rushed for benching. That's such a lesson. So he wouldn't wash in an airport. He might be rushed, they might have to go on the line, they might have to do something, so he didn't wash. Or Rebbetzin Dessler, in Rav Dessler's biography, it says Rebbetzin Dessler would, if she would pass a pawn shop, if her daughter would say, "Ma, look how pretty that item is," she said, "We don't enjoy anything in the window of a pawn shop, because it got there only through people suffering." So you hear things like this, or how Rabbi Yaakov was in the hospital, And he had attached to his right hands all kinds of tubes of IVs and medicines. And he was struggling to get the cup with his right hand. And the nurse asked him, why don't you take the cup with your left hand? And he said to the nurse, we don't make a blessing unless we're holding it in our right hand. I want you to tell you, after I read that, I had to retrain myself. Because if you think about it, I'm a righty. You take a bottle of Poland Spring and you hold it with your right hand, you pour it into the cup with your left hand. The cup is by nature in your left hand. You have to stretch it to your right hand and start. Once you start your brain going, maybe you'll have kavanah in the bracha. So the Maisa is, my Rebbetzin and I, so I was telling you, so Rav Moshe said Avada, so why did I call this Bacher a Chutz Binyak? Because then afterwards he said, and what about under Rosh Hashiva? Said that to Rav Moshe's face. What if I wanted to punch him in the nose? What about under Rosh Hashiva? So Rosh Hashiva said, no. So he said, no. But anyway, so I remember that Reb Chaim was going on the bridge. By the way, the bridge is taken down already. It's a remarkable thing, because the family got reshus to make the bridge, and they were makabel that after 120 they would take it down. And they took it down during Shiva. They took down the bridge. It's an amazing thing. The fact is that if you see how Makbid Rav Silberstein is in the Hilchos Shchenim, in his Svarim, you'll understand how makbid the family is. And they said they're taking it down. You would think during Shiva you don't have to do. No, during Shiva they took down the bridge. For those that don't know, there was a bridge from a Letterman Shul to Rav Chaim's house. So we saw him walking on the bridge. We made a bracha, and then I went in. It was Sukkos. And I got in, again, not my own, I had some protexia there. So I got in, and we went into the sukkah, and they had my wife come in through the back, so she actually saw him. And we asked him for a certain person who's off the derech, and he said, B'karev, that one word, B'karev. Then I gave him a letter. I gave him a whole letter. In the letter, I thanked him for praying for my Rebbetzin, and then I wrote in the letter that I know I could relate to how he feels for missing his Rebbetzin, and I was menachem him for the Rebbetzin in the letter. I saw him reading everything. And then after the letter, where I put down the family and everything, so I have a personal campaign that I believe that we should add to the Daf Yomi two Masechtas. We should add Idias and Pirkei Avos. I have no idea why it's not in the Daf Yomi. Imagine, I could say, Eschatoy ani masker hayom, that until I learned Mishnah Yomis, I said the 6 years plus Mishnah Yomis, until I learned Mishnah Yomis, this is my 6th cycle of Daf Yomi, but I never learned Masechtas Idias, because I was makbid to learn Zroim and Taras, and I learned the Daf. But you could learn Zroim and Taras and learn the Daf and never learn Idias. I never learned Idias until I did the Mishnah Yomis, and then I learned Idias. So I don't understand why Kinim has regular, it's Mishnayos, but it's in the Daf Yomi cycle. So Idias should also be in the Daf Yomi cycle. And for that matter, Pirkei Avos, imagine if the whole world learning Daf Yomi would stop to learn Pirkei Avos. I must learn Pirkei Avos. What it would do, what a wonderful thing. So it's adding like less than 20 days to the cycle. So I have a, it's funny, I shouldn't call him a Talmud because he's so much bigger than me, but he started in my daf, Reb Shmuel David Friedman, And then later on, he ended up writing Stay Soifim on Gan Shas, and he wrote Mitzvah Voice and a whole bunch of other unbelievable svarim. And he's very close to Reb Chaim. So I can imagine how he feels. He used to eat Shabbos with Reb Chaim. So I asked him when he went to ask Reb Chaim. So he said, Reb Chaim said, I should get 100 Rabbanim to sign on it, and then my Rebbetzin took sick, so I couldn't take care of it. So when I was there, I brought it up to him again. What about Idyas and Pirkei Avos? So he turned. I don't know who was with him at the time. What was probably one of the sons, but he turned to him and he's like, "And what about Yerushalmi?" That was his real. That was his. I know it's the idea that let's get Idyas and Pirkei Avos. It's like it was a joke. Well, he's worried about Idyas and Pirkei Avos. What about Yerushalmi? So I had too much Yiras HaKavod to say Tafasta Meruba Loi Tafasta. I had too much Yiras HaKavod to say that, so I didn't say anything. I mean, I still think it's a good idea, notwithstanding, but now it's going to be even harder to pull off. At the time, if I would have gotten his signature on it, then, because I had spoken to the Agam and the Good Rav, I had spoken to Agudah, so they said, well, let us know. Let us know, but anyway, Rav Zilberstein at the Levaya, I got up early to listen to the Levaya, and if you heard the Levaya, you would have heard they say that those that were by the Levaya, could be mispalel, and it was but the Reb Zilberstein said that what's pshat that he told people buha. You say to people an abbreviation. Instead of saying, it's like I'll say to you, instead of saying Shalom Aleichem, I'll say Shah. Shah. It reminds me of, I have a pshat. Where does nu come from? Somebody talks during davening, people go, nu. What are they, imitating a cow? What are they doing? Where did nu come from? So you don't have to like this. This is my own pshat. You don't have to like it. But I wanted to say that nu is Simin Nun Vav, because the first place in Shulchan Aruch that it says not to talk in Shul is in Hilchas Kaddish and Simin Nun Vav. So you're telling people, nu, remember Simin Nun Vav. Anyway, but Lamai says, you could tell it's an original pshat. But anyway, but Lamai is. By the way, I'm not watching the time. It's already. What time is Shachris? 8:50. Okay. 7:05. Where's the one who bought me? Where is it? You raise your hand when it's time for me to stop. This way I make it his fault. That's all. So what's his buha business? So it's interesting. At the Levaya, Reb Zilberstein said the famous Gemara, the Gemara that says that if there's a crowd, they have Havdalah, should everybody make Havdalah or should one person make for everyone? So the svar of one person to make for everyone is Rav Am Hadris Melech. So what's the explanation of the Shita that says everybody should make it themselves? And the explanation is that this way you don't have to answer Amen. So you save the time of not having to answer Amen. So that's the value of time. And the famous story that his son said at the Levaya, his son said that after the stipler passed away, his father passed away, he gave a shir in Yerushalmi, in 5 blot of Yerushalmi on Matzah Shabbos. And he stopped it because he said he didn't have time to prepare. So he said, Abba, how long does it take to prepare? 5 minutes. Right. Yesterday it took me half an hour to prepare the 2 blot of Mishnah Yomis and Demai. Forget about your vamos. Right? And it took him 5 minutes to prepare. 5 minutes? 5 minutes. So the value of time is something that we could all relate to, because the amount of time that many people spend just on scrolling on their cell phones, if they have cell phones that scroll, but just that amount of time, or the shock that you look if the phone tells you how much time you spent on the phone every day, and you look at horror-stricken, right? The value of time. But there's a balance. At the same time, the things that we don't have time for, he had the time. That's a very interesting thing. He visited his parents every morning. You ask people, do you visit your parents? I don't have time. I have a family, I have a business. I don't have time. For that, he had time. He didn't have the time to say bracha v'atzlacha. He didn't have the time to prepare 5 minutes for a shir memory of his father. 5 blot. But he had the time to visit his parents and to eat breakfast by an aunt in honor of his parents. I heard this story, it's a Bereditchev story. His aunt made him a certain thing, cheese, that she thought he liked. And she never knew that it's not that he liked it. Later on, she would send it to him when he was too weak, and he wouldn't eat it. But he went there to honor his parents. His parents' sister. And so, for that, he had time. It's going to be a very scary thing when people are going to try to excuse themselves when they get up to Shemaim. So, did you finish Chumash and Rashi? I tried. I didn't have time. You didn't have time, but you did this and you did that and you did this and you did that. The value of time. Then there's the fact that they asked him that since every second was precious for Torah, was he distraught at all the time he spent on Kabbalah Sakar, on giving brachas, on listening to people? So he said over b'shem his father something that we could use always. And that is, his father said, who knows in what schus I'm still alive? Now, this needs study. Because Torah is Megan Umatzlei, and it's Kisris B'fnei Aparaniyos. So what does he mean by saying, who knows in what schus? He said it b'shem the Stiper, b'shem the Kilas Yaakov. And he obviously felt that way also. I think, I don't have a Kabbalah on this, I don't know, I didn't hear it from the family or anything, but I think a Hesped might be, because I had the famous kasha on the Bameh Harachta Yomim that they asked other Gedolim. Like, for example, they asked Rav Moshe Bameh Harachta Yomim, and he has famously said, Man ganz Leben hab ich keinmal nit getan weit zu a Mensch. My whole life I never caused pain to another person. So you'll say, Torah it's Marach Yomim, Oirech Yomim B'Yaminu B'Smeil Oishu V'Chavod Eitz Chaim Hi L'Machazikim Ba. Torah is the greatest. Keim Chayenu V'Arech Yameinu. Rav Moshe was always learning. I was around Rav Moshe 10 years. I never saw him idle. Never. Never. And he says, I never caused another person pain. What about Torah? The same thing they asked of Shach, Bameh Harachta Yom. So Shach said that he always benched from a bencher. Now this is Rav Shach, who when he was running away from the Nazis and the Russians, he used to say that he looked like a madman. Why? Because he said that he only had the shirt that he was wearing. In the night, he wanted to learn. So he would scrape off wax from the tables, and he would use as a wick. He would manage to make a spark, maybe rubbing 2 pieces of wood, I don't know, and he would pull off a piece of his shirt as a wick. So he should be able to learn. And he says his shirt looked like a wild man because it was pulled off. Every day he pulled off another piece of the shirt. So it was like... And he used to say that when he made the bracha Borei Morei Eish Matzah Shabbos, he had in mind that he had fire to learn by in the night. It's a running away from the Nazis. And this is the man that says he lived long because he benched from a bench. So there's a famous Chassam Sofer. The Chassam Sofer says, "Vayisircha Hashem b'fri vitnecha." Hashem will give you extra because of the children of your womb. So he says that grandparents that find time for their einiklach, it's a reason to live longer than they're supposed to, because the einiklach need them. And I think that the idea is, who knows in what schus a person lives longer than their kates. If somebody needs them, that could be a reason to live longer than their kates. And Rav Chaim says, who knows? We could all say that. Who knows? And what's I always tell people, the best defense is to make yourself needed by your wife. Because even if you're a creep, excuse the expression, but if you're good to your wife doesn't deserve to lose you. That's what it says, that Nadav and Avihu died because they didn't have wives. They died because they brought an Eish Zara, yeah. But if they would have been needed by a wife, they wouldn't have died. They didn't have children. So Reb Chaim said, who knows who's coming in my door, that maybe that's why I'm still alive. Imagine what we could say. When we do things for people, when we do things, also the fact that the family testifies, and it's known that he wouldn't eat lunch without his wife. He would sit and learn, but he wouldn't eat lunch without his wife. When his Rebbetzin passed away, he told Reb Elyashiv, Lulei sarascha shashuoi ozavadati ba'ani. Now you would think, come on, I mean, he's learning every minute, he's learning 17 hours a day. How attached was he to his wife? I mean, come on, he hardly slept. I mean, you see, you're wrong. Because the Torah wants us to be close to a wife. The Torah wants v'davak be'ishtai. The Torah wants that. The Torah munds that. It's really, I see it's 29 minutes and 18 seconds. It really, the greatness of this man demands a seminar. No, really. The greatness of this man demands a entire course. But let me just tell you again, we might not be able to utilize every second. But what we should try to do is at least make use of the time that we're already using. We're making an Asher Yotzer. Let's make it meaningful. Now here I'll give you a little incentive. Because Asher Yotzer is a good thing to start with. Zilberstein has many mices that people saw tremendous refuah from Asher Yotzer. I will tell you that I took a very ehrliche yeshiva man who I knew was a big Baal Machshava when my Rebbetzin was sick, and I paid him a large amount of money because I knew he was learning and he needed it to have more kavan in Asher Yotzer. Most of you are old enough to remember Rabbi Blumenkrantz. Rabbi Blumenkrantz's Pesach book and everything.
Yeah.
So at the end of his life, I visited Rabbi Blumenkrantz in the hospital. He was one of the great poskim. He was very, very helped a lot of people with Taras HaMishpacha. So anyway, we're joined here by Michal Weingart in Germany. Welcome. Amongst a lot of other people that are joining us. So he told me that they want to cut off his leg. So I asked him why. So he says, the way it works is the heart pumps the blood back to the heart. And how does the blood get pumped back? It's pulled up, and as it's pulled up, valves shut that it shouldn't fall back down. He says the valves in his leg aren't shutting. So the blood is not getting back to the heart. So I said, so what do? He says, they cut off the leg. So at the time I said to myself, here's a new kavana in she'im yefaseach echad mehem. If something opens. But you don't need to have such a sophisticated pshat. In Philadelphia, I was supposed to be a scholar in residence in Philadelphia before Pesach. It was pushed off because an 8-year-old child went into the office on Friday in school saying that, I'm not sure, I think it was a she, but I'm not 100% sure. But they said that he wasn't feeling well. By the time they got a chance, the child was already dead. The child had an aneurysm. That means that the brain ruptured. Something opened and filled the brain with blood. That's what we say, she'im yefaseach echad mehem. In Staten Island, this past week, a 48-year-old man, husband and father of children, had a massive heart attack. Blockage. She'im yisasei echad mehem. Ef sheliskayim v'lamal lefanecha afilu sho'echas. So I used to bring water to Rav Moshe to wash. So I once asked him, when I heard him say afilu sho'echas, because it's in parentheses. So I heard him say afilu sho'echas. I said, what's pshat afilu sho'echas? And the pashup pshat is if you're constipated. What does it mean you can't be miskayim afilu sho'echas? Maybe a few days is already you're going out of your kalim. But a sho'echas? So you have to hear what Rav Moshe told me. He says, what's kiyum for a yid? Kiyum for a yid is to be able to learn Torah be'iyan with concentration. Anything that disturbs you, that's not considered kiyum. That's not kiyum. But saying Asher Yotzer not when we're booting up the computer. not when we're preparing lunch, but stopping to say Asher Yotza. Use the second of Shahakol Niya Bidvaro to feel Shahakol Niya Bidvaro. You know what that means? That means that not just the water. Why do we make such a generic bracha, Shahakol Niya Bidvaro? Because we're thanking Hashem for the water. We're thanking Hashem for the cup, otherwise I'd have to go and slurp it. If you like cold water, you're thanking Hashem for the refrigerator. You're thanking Hashem for the electricity. And if you played a good game of ball, and then you take a drink, you're thanking Hashem for the friends, for the exercise. It's all Shahakol Niya Bidvaro. That's using a moment. And I'm going to conclude because I want you to call me back here again. And if I'm going to abuse the time, you're going to say we don't want him near the building until Mashiach. And by the way, if anybody wants a daf yomi, I don't know if you have one here, but if anybody wants a daf yomi right near here, I give a daf yomi every night at 8 o'clock in Fairways at 2 Valley Stream in my house. I have a shul. So it's 2 Valley Stream. You just tell them at the gate that you're coming to 2 Valley Stream. And or on Wednesday night at 9 o'clock, I give a Chumashir. Now until Pesach, it's on the Haggadah. And you're welcome to come to that as well. Ladies are invited to that as well. That's Wednesday nights at 9. I just want to finish about using a moment of time. A moment of time with your wife can mamish change your marriage from humdrum to special. The way a person says goodbye to a wife, the way a person greets the wife, the moment call, the stopping for a second to pick up a snack, or if she's diet-minded, her favorite fruit or vegetable, those seconds, picking up a card, or even better, writing something yourself that she could read over again and again, those seconds add up, and it brings Shechina into the home. Ish v'isha shalom beineim, Shechina shruya beineim. You know the famous story, and with this I conclude. It's the famous story of Rosh Zalman Auerbach. Different Gedolim carried different things in their pockets. Rav Miller carried seeds in his pockets. He said you could see Hashem from a seed. You put a seed in the ground, out comes a tree full of seeds every year. Every year. It's an amazing thing, from one seed. He said from seeds, he carried seeds in his pocket. Rav Zalman Auerbach carried a tube of water in his pocket. And when he went into his house, he took out the tube and he took the water and straightened out his beard. So somebody asked him, usually people do that when they leave the house. So you all say, oh, he did it for his wife. No. He said he lives with Shalom Bayis, so he has a very rarefied Shechina in his home. And he's preparing himself for that Shechina. This is Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach that was learning, and he had Afilu Echad Yoshev Ha'is B'Torah Shechina Kenegla. But this is a very special Shechina, a Shechina of Kodesh Kodashim. And the schus of everybody coming out to give kavod HaTorah to the Sar HaTorah. Normally we don't say it, but for the Sar HaTorah, I assume we could say it should be a Meltz Yosha for us. And we should know only of Simchas Ad Bias Gel Tzedek B'Meher V'Yameinu.